Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart, and today I'll be breaking down the Thursday night football slate between the Saints and the Cardinals. $500,000 up top to first place on DraftKings. So if you're new to the channel, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. I'll be going player by player, giving my best plays, value plays, dart throw plays for this slate tomorrow. Trying to make the push to 1,000 subscribers, so definitely hit that like button and subscribe. Do appreciate it. And now let's get into the slate breakdown. As always, follow me on Twitter, HartDFS. Answer any questions you guys have. Putting up my DFS plays for basketball and football and PGA as well. So all the good stuff is on my Twitter at HartDFS. Now I want to, do a quick little recap of my lineup from the Monday Night Football slate. Once again, I barely finished out of cash. Was it 6 away from cashing, 6 points away. So super frustrating. Chargers have one of the worst rush defenses in the league. I play a very low-owned Melvin Gordon, under 25%, less than 6% of captain against an atrocious run defense. He gets benched. Gets 3 total touches in the first quarter and benched the rest of the game. Benched. Unreal. I mean, Eckler, classic 10 catches. Herbert did not do good. Judy did solid. I managed to fade Mike Williams, Cortland Sutton, as I said in my breakdown video. It played out. It worked perfectly. Played Jordan Palmer, hit Darnold Parham. But no, Melvin Gordon. Sole reason why I don't cash and why I don't, have the possibility of taking down the tournament is solely because of him. That's 2 straight DraftKings tournaments where I've gotten screwed by players, and it's just super frustrating. But yeah, enough of the complaining. Let's get into the slate breakdown. I have two interesting stats I want to read to you guys before the slate breakdown about these showdown slates. There's been at least one kicker in 52.1% of the top 1% finishing showdown lineups through week 6. There's also been at least one defense in 42% of them. There's also been at least one defense or kicker in 73% of them. And there has been 2+ defenses or kickers in 33.4%. As well as 3-3 stacks, so like 3 Saints, 3 Cardinals, or 4-2, so like 4 Saints, 2 Cardinals, or 4 Cardinals, 2 Saints. Those roster constructions have now won 16 of the past 20 showdown slates, including London. So I think a lot of people, even me, I fall into that category. Sometimes I get too unique by, putting some random captain plays in there at times and, trying to get very different in the flex. I really don't think you need to. That stat, although it's not 100% going to dictate every situation and outcome in the future, it's pretty telling that 16 of the past 20 showdown slates have been an even split almost, or at least 4-2 split of the teams. So you really don't have to get different to get a winning lineup. You don't really have to stray too far away to be able to take down in this tournament. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, at the top, Kyler Murray, he's one of those few quarterbacks that does have that upside to be an optimal captain. Really haven't seen it this year. One solid game against Las Vegas when he didn't even reach 300 passing yards. Only reached it once this season. It's just been a bad year for the Cardinals in general. Really think they need to fire Cliff Kingsbury. He's just not been good for Kyler Murray, and it's showing this year. I know they dealt with injuries, but it's just brutal how bad their offense is with Kyler. But besides that, he's one of those quarterbacks that does have the upside for 300 yards passing. He can throw multiple touchdowns. And he's running a little bit more than he has at the beginning of the season, 12, 4, and then 10 for 100 yards. Hasn't scored a rushing touchdown in the past 2 weeks, but he's one of those guys who is a good throwing quarterback, good running quarterback. So if you're going to put him in the optimal captain, he's one of those quarterbacks also where if you put him in the optimal captain spot, you don't necessarily need to have multiple of his pass catchers in there. He's a guy, as we can see, can put up 100+ rushing yards. So with that, I'd say maybe 2 at most. You can definitely get away with just playing 2. You don't have to get crazy and play 3. But yeah, if you're playing Kyler, you're going to want to get to, I'd say, at least 2 pass catchers. I really like DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not really sure if he's been able to practice with the team at all. I mean, some of the reports really haven't been clear on whether he's been able to practice with them. I'm assuming he's been practicing in some sort of capacity. It's not like he's new to the team. He knows all the plays. So really expect him to be back into this team and be playing well as a number 1 receiver, as Marquise Brown is now out for at least the next month. But with DeAndre Hopkins, you could also throw in a guy like, Zach Ertz, Rondale Moore. The kickers are always, viable with a stack on offense. And I'd say you can get down to AJ Green. Greg Dortch has been out of the rotation. And they're also adding, Robbie Anderson, but I don't think he'll play. But so that's what you do if you're going to stack the quarterback. I'd say at least get 2 of their pass catching players from his team. But back to the overall breakdown. We got Kyler Murray, 11-2. As I said, you can definitely throw him in an optimal captain. I think he's one of those must plays at flex. I don't really see a situation where he's not at least in the flex for me in overall. So really think he's just a lock in the flex, and you can definitely throw him in the captain. Kamara, he's really brought it back on the past 2 games. As you can see, 23 attempts, 19. I think that's a little high for a guy like Kamara, especially with Jameis back, who does like to throw it. But it's nice to see the targets. He had 7 targets with Jameis in week 3. Didn't perform, well when it came to rushing the ball. Hasn't seen any rushing touchdowns this year yet. He's kind of gotten screwed over by Taysom Hill. And it's same with receiving. So he's 0 touchdowns on the year. Do expect that to, come back down to earth. Do really expect him to get a touchdown probably in this game. I like Kamara a good amount in the captain spot as well. Hopkins, I think he's a valuable captain. If you're going to play him the captain, obviously you're going to want to play Kyler. So really, really like all 3 of these top guys for both sides. Marquise Brown is obviously out. We can take a look at the snap count. Obviously Marquise was pretty much playing every snap. But besides that, AJ Green going to be the second wide receiver. So it's going to be, what's his name? Why am I forgetting it? DeAndre Hopkins is probably going to be obviously number 1 wide receiver. It'd be interesting to see a snap count. I would assume it's going to be, 80%, if not more. So he's going to be wide receiver 1. Wide receiver 2, I would say, is now probably going to be Rondale Moore. As you can see, his snaps have only gone up. He's going to be playing pretty much every offensive snap. Wide receiver 3, AJ Green. And then I think Greg Dortch will probably see a few snaps, but it doesn't really matter. He's kind of fallen out of the rotation, which kind of sucks because he was actually pretty decent when they were throwing him the ball, and he's wide receiver 2 on the team. He is obviously pretty much off the rotation for the Cardinals. So, down to Winston. He makes for an okay flex play. Obviously, he does have a little bit of a floor, but at the same time, he does have a good ceiling. He's throwing it 34, 40, 41 times. Can't get you over 300 yards passing, so he'll get that bonus on DraftKings. He's a decent thrower. He's prone to throwing interceptions, so that does mean that the Cardinals defense is definitely in play. But yeah, I think he's a flex play. Don't really see him as a captain unless he had a fantastic game throwing the ball. And, maybe that happens, but I think I'd rather just play him in the flex, and that's about it. But we still have to wait on the word if he's going to be the starting quarterback or not. Once again, James Conner is questionable. We have to keep a word on that. He did not practice. If he's good to go, I don't know if I'd play him. The Saints defense is pretty solid against the run. He also is banged up with the injury of the rib injury. He could get hit, could flare up on him. So as of right now, I think, I'm just going to wait on the news, but it doesn't look like I'm going to play him. But you definitely can. He's involved in the passing game. He should see at least close to 15 touches. Hasn't done much this season. The offense has been terrible, but he does have that upside. That price tag's a little iffy, $8,800. But as of right now, just going to act like he's not in and say, Benjamin's in. It was nice to see 15 attempts from him, but once again, that offense is just brutal. Can't run, can't really throw. Same thing. Whoever's thrown in at running back, they have the upside when it comes to, rushing and getting those passes out of the backfield. It's just the team can't score, can't really get anything going. So 8,200 is, kind of a hefty price tag for but we'll just have to wait on that running back news. Chris Olave, wide receiver 1 for the Saints. If we can take a look at the Saints wide receiver room, he was, gearing up to be the main wide receiver, obviously, with Mike Thomas and Jarvis Landry out. He got the concussion. But yeah, really, really like Olave. Do expect him to get back into that 70% snap range, if not more. Expect him to be wide receiver 1. Wide receiver 2 going to be Marquez Callaway. Wide receiver 3 going to be Traquan Smith. And then you can expect, a little bit of Keith Kirkwood. Don't really think he's going to be seen in the 70% range. I'd say maybe 30% or less. Now that Olave's back. But yeah, he's wide receiver 1. Obviously, has had a great season so far, 12, 26, 16, 15 on, first two and second game, third game, 13 targets each. Came back down to earth. Obviously, Andy Dalton was throwing the ball, and Jameis was these first 2 games. So really like the upside here with Chris Olave. Do expect him to get closer to that 10 target range, if not more, as the number 1 wide receiver for Jameis Winston. So he looks like a fantastic captain play, pretty cheap one as well. So you can definitely put him in there with Jameis and then fill out with a few other studs. Taysom Hill, 7,200. With Jameis back, maybe he gets some snaps closer to the red zone. He always is a threat there. But if that happens, you really need him to score a touchdown. I really don't know if anything under 10 points is going to make him get in the optimal lineup. Maybe he throws a pass touchdown, or maybe gets 2 rushing touchdowns. But it's really unlikely, with Jameis back, that they're going to utilize him as much. But we'll have to see. I just don't really like that price tag on him. Maybe if he was like priced as like a tight end, I'd take that shot, but really don't, think it's necessary that you have to take a shot on Taysom Hill at 7,200. Zach Ertz has been super solid. If Marquise Brown wasn't injured and, D-Hop is obviously coming back, really think Zach Ertz's targets would have fell off. Probably would have been around like 6 a game. But since Marquise Brown is out, they're still going to rely heavily on Zach Ertz. As you can see, double-digit fantasy points in every game so far this season. I think you can expect the same here. You can make the argument he is in play for a captain, being in the optimal captain spot, but I think he's a little limited. He's not catching a ton of deep passes. His longest one has been 32 yards. Everything else is pretty much over the middle, in that 10 to 25-yard range. Catching a good amount of them, but I'd rather take a shot on a guy like Olave or D-Hop, who's going to get those air yards and have, huge play upside. Tre'Quan Smith, don't know why he's 6,200, priced way too high for the third string wide receiver. He did get that touchdown, so maybe that's why, but he only saw 3 targets. He caught all 3 of them. He's a pretty fast, shifty guy, as we can see from the snap count. He played 71%, but obviously Marquez Callaway is seen more as that wide receiver too. So I'd rather take a shot on him, who's way cheaper. So I really don't think you have to take a shot on Tre'Quan Smith. Looks decent at best as a flex play. Rondale Moore looks very, very solid. 5, 8, 10. Seen a ton of targets. Not a ton of big play opportunities yet with him. They're kind of getting him involved in the screens, kind of mid-range throws, but he does have some big play upside. He's very, very fast. So 5,800 for a guy who's getting a ton of looks is very, very solid at 5,800. You can make the argument to play him as a captain, but I'd much rather play him as a flex. He's a lot safer there. Robbie Anderson, it looks like Robbie Anderson might not play at all, maybe a few snaps at most, so I don't think you have to go there yet. Mark Ingram's playing about 30% of the snaps. You could take a shot and hope he falls in the end zone, otherwise he's not going to get you there, but it's worth, a dart throw if you want. Marquez Callaway, as I said, going to be playing 75% of the snaps, maybe a little bit more. I'd rather take a shot on him. He's a little bit bigger of a wide receiver compared to Tre'Quan Smith. You should see, a few targets, in that 5 to 6 range. I'd rather take a shot on him than Tre'Quan, especially for the price difference. Was it 6,000 compared to 4,800? 62 compared to 4,800. The defenses, as I said, Jameis Winston's known to throw a ton of bad throws, interceptions, so there is that chance that the defense could score a defensive touchdown. Their defense has been pretty solid this year, especially the past few games when it comes to sacks and not giving up a ton of points. I think the defense for the Cardinals is definitely in play. Wouldn't put them in the captain. I'd say, the flex is the only spot I'd put them. So they look decent this week. Matt Amendola looks okay. Same thing, if Prater's back, would definitely play Prater. He's got a huge leg. But if it's Matt Amendola, I just don't think I'd rather go to like a Will Lutz at 4,000. But, as I said with those stats earlier at the beginning, there's been a kicker in, what did I say, at least 57%, at least one kicker in 57% of the lineups this year so far. The kickers have dominated, so have the defenses, but it looks like one of those games where it might be the same thing, but I'd just rather get two guys with a little bit higher upside. Saints defense looks okay. Kyler can throw, some interceptions. He does get sacked quite a bit. I mean, they've been okay this year. They've given up a ton of points. It's because their offense has been so bad, so they can't really keep their defense off the field. So it's allowed them to, get scored on a ton, but they look okay, 3,400. Don't think it to do it. Dortch, as I said, it looks like he's not going to get any run at all, even with Marquise Brown going down, because obviously D-Hop is back. Don't mind getting to Juwan Johnson. Saw a good amount of targets the first 2 out of 3 weeks with Jameis Winston. Obviously, Jameis got hurt, and then since then, it's kind of picked back up for him in terms of targets. So you can definitely take a shot there, 3,000. Not seeing a ton of depth on the throws, not a lot of air yards. So there's a question mark there because, if he's getting 6 targets and most of them are 20 yards or less, he's going to have to catch everything. Otherwise, he's not going to pay off that salary. But, he could be a red zone threat. Don't mind taking a shot there if you expect him to fall in the end zone. AJ Green, same thing. One of those wide receivers, he's seen, 5 to 6 targets a game. Just not huge, crazy up depth. He will get a few red zone looks, but he's just more of one of those value dart throw plays. New Orleans, Shaheed, don't think he to go there. That really does it. I mean, there's not really much in terms of, dart throw $200 guys. I mean, Keith Kirkwood, if you want to take a shot there, I mean, it's pretty disgusting. He's also questionable. Got 1 catch. I really don't think you have to do it, especially with Olave coming back. Let's see, on the tight end side, McBride saw a few plays. Tight end room from, Troutman saw a few plays, but he got injured. Hill's in there. JP Holt's more of a blocker. So there's not really any of those, random dart throw plays under 1,000, under, let's say even under 2,000 here for either side. So I really don't think you have to force that tomorrow. So rather take a shot on kind of the mid-range. There's a lot of good mid-range plays on this slate for tomorrow that will allow you to at least get up to 1 or 2 of these stud players. But I really think Kyler is a must play in the flex. As well as Kamara, he's just a huge part of the offense. Really think you're going to have to get Chris Olave in there. I think you can play both of them without playing Jameis in the flex, but it is a little risky. But I'd say my favorite captain play so far, heading into the slate tomorrow, is probably going to be D-Hop. Let's see how much money that gives you left over. Not much, $2,750. If you're going to do that, you'd have to play one of these gross wide receivers. I mean, even if you play AJ Green, you get $2,900 left over. It doesn't give you much. So, yeah, it's pretty tough to fit in a lot of these studs, especially if you're going to pay up for one of the top 3 guys in the captain spot. But I think that's the best route to go. Obviously, we know kickers and defenses have kind of been the key so far this season through the first 6 weeks of primetime games. So hopefully it changes in week 7 and we get more of the wide receiver or running backs going off. But you never know. But if you do like the video, like the breakdown, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.